This is how I went from an engineer on $60,000 a year to having a couple $100 million of property projects within a 5-year period. The first thing I did after I finished university at 22, I actually went to get educated in the property space. I knew virtually nothing about property other than a couple of books I've read. One of those books being Steve McKnight, 0 to 150 Properties in 3.5 years. It was a great book at the time. It's now outdated. Those tactics, the strategies don't work in the same way that he did it. They can work, but under my accumulation method. And I went and got educated basically at every property seminar that I could attend. It didn't matter whether it was free, whether it was just to buy and hold property, whether it was to do property development. I did them all, and then I decided only after a couple of months that I would do property development. I got really excited by the prospect of adding value to a property and be able to quit my job pretty quickly. And it took me a few years before I actually did quit my job. I didn't quit my job in the first 3, 6 months or 12 months. It did take some time to build up to the point where I was comfortable in quitting my engineering job. But when I first started on $60,000 a year, I actually spent, by the time I was 23, I had spent $30,000 on various courses and things. And admittedly, most of them were actually rubbish, but it didn't actually matter because they gave me the idea and the basic skill sets that then I could go and run with, because I didn't know that that was possible. And sure, I would have figured it out by myself if I hadn't have done those courses and hadn't spent $30,000 in the first 12 months, but it would have taken me a lot longer. So while everybody else was scrimping and saving for their first home, I spent 30 grand, which could have been my first home deposit. I spent that on people teaching me, on mentors teaching me how to actually do property development and property investment. And fast forward, 5 years beyond that, it well and truly paid off because I had built a couple $100 million property pipeline at that point. Now that pipeline, I'm still in the process of delivering some of those projects. Some of those projects are 5, 6 year projects. And over the next couple of years, I will have committed and finished a couple $100 million in addition to the other 15 odd projects I've completed over the last decade, some of which I was still working full time and in an engineering job, still making $60,000 a year. I did get a couple of price promotions within that as well. But once I quit work, it actually opened me up to what is possible and what's possible when you do actually have property development or property investment, when you do it full time and you're not working in a job. Especially where I came from, I was in a job for 70, 80 hours per week, plus I was trying to do property on the side. So I was working 100 hours a week for many years as a young man, and it wasn't until that I got all that time back that I realized how substantial that was. And that's actually where I really exploded in what I was doing. I went from doing single houses or multi 2 and 3 townhouse developments, then ramping up to multi 15, 20, $30 million projects at a time and beyond that. And that was the pipeline that I established way back then, which was a couple $100 million by the time or before I got to 30. And it really took me 5 years to get to that point.